Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana-salakaya Chakshur-militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. We are reading this evening, continuing reading from Sri Guru and His Grace. Today we are at chapter 3, entitled Descent of the Revealed Truth, by Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj. Krishna consciousness, the spiritual conception of the highest level, descends by flowing down from one level to the next, just as from the peak of a mountain, the Ganges flows in a zigzag way from one peak to another. Sometimes the water of the Ganges mixes with the current of the Saraswati. That water is not to be considered Ganges water. When the water of the Saraswati joins the current of the Ganges, it is considered to be Ganges water. When the two rivers meet, the water that flows away from the Ganges is not the Ganges. But when the Saraswati's waters enter into the current of the Ganges, it becomes the Ganges. There is a saying that whatever water is deep within the current of the Ganges riverbed is the real Ganges water. That water will purify us, whatever its point of origin may have been. The purifying potency of the water has nothing to do with the water we can feel and see. What can we see with our physical eyes? The current of the Ganges is pure. When the spirit and sanction is there, it is a living thing and can purify everyone. Dead mantras. So the very gist of the Guru Parampara, the disciplic succession, is Shiksha, the spiritual teaching. And wherever it is to be traced, there is Guru. One who has the transcendental eye, the divine eye, will recognize the Guru wherever he appears. One who possesses knowledge of absolute divine love and purity, he is Guru. Otherwise, the Guru Parampara is only a bodily Parampara, a succession of bodies. Then the caste Brahmanas, the caste Goswamis, will continue with their trade, because body after body they are getting the mantra. But their mantra is dead. We are after a living mantra, and wherever we can trace the living tendency for a higher type of devotional service, we shall find that there is our Guru. One who has that sort of vision awakened will be able to recognize the Guru wherever he may appear. Initiation into the mantra means to impart real knowledge and devotional sentiment from one to another. And that must be genuine. Nothing can be known about a homeopathic globule by an outer physical inspection, but the potency is within. So also within the mantra, the important thing is the type of thought or sentiment which is imparted through the sound. The impersonalists have got the same mantra and are also chanting the holy name of Krishna, but that sort of name will vanish in the Brahmajyoti. They will not be able to cross the Viraj, the river between the material and the spiritual worlds. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur says that when a Mayavadi chants the name of Krishna, his chanting of the name of Krishna is just like thunder to the holy body of Krishna. It does not produce any soothing effect. The Gaudiya Math deals with reality, not with the frame. We are trying to understand what is what in the spiritual thought world. We are not enchanted or captured by the mere form. We are interested in the step-by-step development in spiritual thought. In his Upadeshamrita, verse number 10, Srila Rupa Goswami has said, Karmi bhya parito hare priyataya vyaktim yayur gyaninas Tebyo jnana vimukta bhakti parama premaika nishtas tata. Out of many materialists, one may be a philosopher. Out of many philosophers, one may become liberated and take to devotional service. Out of many devotees, one may attain pure love of Krishna, and he is best of all. We're interested in understanding this gradation. What is the Viraj river? What is the spiritual sky? The planet of Lord Shiva? The Vaikuntha world of Vishnu, Lord Ram's Ayodhya, and then Krishna in Dwarka, Mathura, and Vrindavan. We want to know the realistic view of the whole gradation of devotional thought. Krishna shows this gradation in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where he says, Srimad Bhagavatam 11, 14, 15, Na tata me priyattama atma yonir na shankara, na cha sankarshano na shrir naivatma cha yatha bhavan. Neither Brahma, nor Shiva, nor Shankarshan, nor of Vaikuntha, nor the goddess of fortune Lakshmi Devi, nor even my own self is as dear to me as you. You are my favorite, Uddhava. We have to follow the spirit. Otherwise, after Janava Devi, the wife of Lord Nityananda, up to Bipin Goswami, and from whom Bhaktivinoda Thakur took initiation, there are so many unknown lady gurus. Through them, the mantra came to Bipin Goswami, and from him Bhaktivinoda Thakur received the mantra. We accept Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but should we count all those ladies in our disciplic succession? What was their realization? Slaves of the truth. We are slaves of the truth. We are beggars for the pure current of truth that is constantly flowing, the fresh current. We are not charmed by any formality. I will bow down my head wherever I find the river of nectar coming down to me. When one is conscious that the absolute truth is descending to him from the highest domain, he will think, I must surrender myself here. Mahaprabhu says to Ramananda Rai, Kiba Vipra, Kibanyasi, Shudra, Keninaya, Yai Krishna Tattvaveta, Say Guru Haya. Wherever the truth appears, wherever the nectar of divine ecstasy descends, I shall offer myself as a slave. That is my direct concern. Whatever form it takes doesn't matter much. The form has some value, but if there is any conflict, the inner spirit of a thing should be given immense value over its external cover. Otherwise, if the spirit has gone away and the bodily connection gets the upper hand, our so-called spiritual life becomes sahajya, a cheap imitation. When we are conscious of the real substance of Krishna consciousness, the real wealth we are receiving from our spiritual master, then our spiritual life cannot be sahajiyism, imitationism. We must be aware enough to detect our Guru's advice when we find it in another. One who is awake will see, here is my Guru's advice. I find it here in this man. Somehow or other, it has come here. How, I don't know, but I see my Guru's characteristics, his dealings, and behavior in this person. When we are able to recognize a thing for its intrinsic value, then, wherever we find it, we cannot neglect it. And we use this instruction of Guru Maharaj and our own glorification, our own appraisal and glorification of Guru Maharaj himself. Not only we, but even Guru Maharaj's godbrothers did such a thing, which, if anything, is testimony to the superlative, exalted, unique constitution or the position of Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. That after the departure of Siddhanta Saraswati, there was some disturbance and division in the Gaudiya Math. And a certain amount of confusion as regards to who to follow. And it was an application of this principle of bowing one's head, searching out, taking shelter of, availing oneself of that which is in line with, is conducting the same substance as the one's own spiritual master. So wherever that is recognized, that is honored as a place fit for surrender, or something that is deserving of one's submission and surrender, and one can have some trust, confidence, faith that surrender there will continue to advance one in the line of one's own Gurudev without any dilution or diversion. So this was, Guru Maharaj was recognized as fulfilling this condition by his own godbrothers, as someone who was preserving and representing and continuing the purity of the teachings of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Now, not only his godbrothers, you could say not only the disciples, right? That would be, that's one level of testimony to someone's eligibility for something, let's say, to present spiritual truth as a guru, that the disciples are being nourished. You say, yes, that's a guru should fulfill that function of nourishing and supporting their disciples. And that in itself is some amount of testimony to the genuine nature of a guru. You could say a second level of testimony is if the godbrothers are endorsing that person. That's an even deeper level of testimony, inspiring an even profounder level of faith or confidence in that person's position. And
deeper level than what, sorry?
A deeper level than the disciple, than the nourishment and progression of the disciples shows that they're getting something from the Guru. So that's one level of testimony, as if the disciples are being nourished. But higher than that, if the godbrothers are given recognition to that person, and the godbrothers are getting nourished, that person's godbrothers, you could say contemporaries in a sense, if they are also honoring and acknowledging a person as fit for receiving spiritual instruction from, that is a higher level of acknowledgement or testimony to that person's qualification. But even higher than that, you say, oh wow, but even higher than that is when one's own guru gives acknowledgement and endorsement.
Nice point. So the Sridhar Maharaj had that in all three counts.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just getting to that. Yeah. So his own guru gave him the title Bhakti Rakshak, the guardian of devotion, and said, I'm confident that in Srila Guru Maharaj, that someone is able to properly represent the conception of Thakur Bhakti Vinod, which was the whole thrust of Siddhanta Saraswati's purpose. His whole mission was centered on service to the spiritual realization and conception of Thakur Bhakti Vinod.
And then I just add another layer of endorsement is when the godbrothers of your guru also,
yeah.
like in Gurudev's case,
yes,
Guru
yeah.
Vinaya Shisha Sambhu Shikam.
Right, yeah.
I mean, in the case of Srila Srinivas, that wasn't possible because Saraswati Thakur was the only disciple of Gorkishore Swamiji.
Right,
In one sense, that's even higher endorsement than one's own guru, because just from an objective point of view, because someone may say, oh, well, the guru is partial, to their disciple. Yeah, we get it. But if the godbrothers of the guru, who are neutral, completely neutral, they're also like endorsing their godbrother's disciple.
Right.
That's like, whoa, can't argue with that. So that's so nice, the way that Srila Srinivas, he gave that idea in Gurudev's Pranam,
right.
Gaura Bhishtasa Purakam and Guru Ganesh
Ganer as in Ghana, like group.
Yeah, the guru group.
Guru's group, right.
Yeah. He's also decorated with their blessings.
Yeah. Wow. So, when we are able to recognize the thing for its intrinsic value, then wherever we find it, we cannot neglect it. And so the I think I was going to finish something if I have my train of thought. No, that's okay, no problem. Yes, so that is the test for test of whether someone is worthy of one's surrender. As we touched on the other day, not everyone who professes to be a guru is worthy of one's surrender. And of course, on one level, if one is sincere, then they will be rewarded for their sincerity in terms of getting worthwhile, genuine spiritual guidance. And to the degree that one is insincere, to that same degree they will be misled. Or to the same degree they will receive a guru who will cater to their insincerities. But it's also, if one may even have a perfect guru, but it does not mean that necessarily one is fully taking advantage of that, fully capitalizing on that opportunity. And that is also due to insincerity on the part of the disciple. So on one level there may be fortune that they've attained a good guru, and there is potential, very real potential, for making a tremendous amount of spiritual advancement in one's own life. And even though Guru Maharaj very soberly and to instill in people that get a little perhaps carried away and cheapen the grandeur or the enormity of what it is to go beyond the Maya Shakti and actually achieve some kind of purity of consciousness, some kind of chitta shuddhi, and then devotion on top of that. The enormity of that, he would sometimes say, it's not necessarily something that can just happen in a lifetime, or perhaps saying you follow a particular formula and it's going to happen, like a recipe, like a mix a certain quantity of ingredients together and you're going to get a dish, or a chemical formula of some kind. Do this, do that, and this is the resulting product. In other words, chant a certain number of rounds every day and follow a certain set of principles, and that's it. The gates to Goloka are open. So, in order to de-quantify and dematerialize and preserve the real enormity, in a sense, or the value, the actual value of spiritual realization, of the development of bhakti, the blossoming of bhakti, Guru Maharaj kind of cautioned over-enthusiastic devotees that it's not necessarily something so cheap it can be done very fast or formulaically. And it's not always necessarily just quantifiable in terms of what one may be implementing into their lifestyle in certain ways. But at the same time, and that can lead to a certain amount of hopelessness at times where people go, the task is quite enormous. And the paradoxical energy of Krishna, the Maya Shakti, which appears to be working against the natural flow of the jiva towards Krishna. It's a natural, inherent thing. All consciousness wants to move towards the source of beauty and love. And then there's this energy which is also belonging to Krishna, this Maya Shakti, this illusory energy, which seems to be getting in the way and working against the natural interest of every conscious unit. It's a paradox. It's a paradoxical energy. But it's serving a very valuable purpose. Because not just anyone and everyone is going to move into that plane of pure love, pure consciousness and devotion and disturb that environment. So Maya is essentially a quality control mechanism. Yes. So you're not going to move in until you're ready to contribute to that environment, until you've lost or been purified from any kind of exploitative tendency, and you're ready to somehow serve that plane, rather than move in to try and steal something and disturb the atmosphere. So essentially, it's an educational mechanism, an educational function of Maya. Sometimes difficult, but learning new things is not. And you know, the value of an educational achievement is often measured in the difficulty of the process that leads to that achievement. So it's not always easy on the spiritual path. And Gurudev says that sometimes we may become hopeless. A certain hopelessness may set in. And that's very real from time to time. It can be acknowledged. People may feel it's a sense of hopelessness. But at the same time, acknowledging that needs to be acknowledged. We're realistic here. It's not everyone must be on some kind of artificially contrived optimism all the time. It's not necessarily the case. But at the same time, there is a deep undercurrent of hopefulness. And that hopefulness is actually premised on the fact that Gurudev and the current that is being represented to and enhanced and given to us through Gurudev and through the devotees, those people that are representing Gurudev, that has the ability to lift one from one place to from a deplorable conditioned state to one of to that spiritual state that we're aiming to achieve. And in this sense, Gurudev has actually said, sincerity is very important, of course, but also to be prepared to handle the speed of the journey. Gurudev has actually used those exact words or very similar words. And that is also to be taken as truth, that the spiritual potency and the as given by Gurudev and those who represent Gurudev does have a powerful purifying effect. And it is a cause for optimism, for deep optimism. And it does have a very real transformational effect that can actually happen quite rapidly. If one is sincere and if one commits themselves from their side, it does take a certain amount of personal commitment and introspection as well, and strength. So the point given here that we are to move towards that guru, that shiksha, wherever we see it as honoring and accurately reflecting the teachings of one's Gurudev. And that touches on the point being made the other day, which is worth briefly reiterating, that in order to broaden the scope of Guru Tattva, to see Guru everywhere, one must first be able to recognize the quality. In other words, where is that thing that my Gurudev gave me? One must know what that is first, before being able to see it in a multiplicity of places.
Very nice.
And unless they cannot see first what their Guru has given, then there's always the risk of mistaking that same thing in other places. Or, not even mistaking that same thing, substituting what they feel they knew about their Guru for something coming from some other place. And the point being that to have confidence in one's Gurudev brings us back to the point of the endorsement being given, the progress of the disciples, the endorsement being given by the God brothers, by the Guru, and by the Guru's associates as well. Srila Gurudev meeting all those criteria. There is an example of this. Okay, I'll just read the last paragraph again. Here is my Guru's advice. I find it here in this man. Somehow or other it has come here. How, I don't know, but I see my Guru's characteristics, his dealings and behavior in this person. When we are able to recognize a thing for its intrinsic value, then wherever we find it, we cannot neglect it. There is an example of this in an instance regarding Aurobindo Ghosh of Pondicherry. He was the first leader of the anarchist party and practically the founder of the revolutionary movement in Bengal. In 1928, a case against him was proceeding in Kolkata High Court. A famous attorney, Mr. Norton, was in charge of the prosecution. Aurobindo had absconded, and when the case was going on, he was not to be found anywhere. Norton was concerned how to find him. Aurobindo's English was very good English. He had been educated in England from childhood and could speak English even better than Englishmen. Norton began to search through different papers and magazines for Aurobindo's writing. Finally, he found Aurobindo's style of writing in the Amrita Bazar Patrika, a Bengali newspaper. "Here is Mr. Ghosh," he said. The editor of the Amrita Bazar Patrika was summoned to court to find out whether Aurobindo Ghosh had written the article. Norton examined him. "This is your paper. You must know who has written this article. You are the editor." "Yes, I know." "Do you know this man, Aurobindo Ghosh?" "Yes, I know him. I consider him to be one of the greatest men in the world." "As the editor of this newspaper, do you know who wrote this article?" "Yes, I know." "Has Mr. Ghosh written this article?" "I won't say." Norton asked him, "Do you know what is the punishment?" "Yes, 6 months imprisonment." "You are ready for that?" "Yes, I'm ready for that." Holding up the newspaper article, Norton said, "Here is Mr. Ghosh. I rest my case." He saw Aurobindo in his writing, and in a similar way, we must see, "Here is my Gurudev." Our spiritual master would also sometimes say of one of his disciples who had departed, "Bhakti Vinod Thakur came to me, but I could not recognize him." those whose divine vision is awake. One Krishna in many gurus. We must have the vision to recognize the presence of our guru's temperament. Mahaprabhu says, Madhavendra Purira Sambandha Darajani. When Mahaprabhu met the Sanodiya Brahmin, upon seeing his movements, he at once detected that this Brahmin must have some connection with Madhavendra Puri. He said, without his connection, I could never find such symptoms of transcendental ecstasy. It must come from Madhavendra Puri. So we must know Krishna consciousness in truth. It is said, Acharyam mam vijaniyan. The spiritual master is not to be differentiated. One thing is coming down from the Supreme Lord, so the oneness of continuity is not to be ignored. Guru can be here, Guru can be in another body also. The same teacher may come in a different body to inspire us. He may come to give us new hope and higher education. The substance should always be given a higher value than the form. And this was the very gist of Siddhanta Saraswati's reforms in the Gaudiya Math, where previous to that there was a system of initiation, system of parampara in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, where the teachers and the disciples were, or the monopoly on guruship was traditionally confined to various families, and at least in Bengal, and also to an extent in Vrindavan, although not so strictly in families. Nonetheless, the emphasis was always on diksha, initiation, which is physical initiation, physical diksha from one guru to the next. And it was understood that for anyone to be a genuine representative of a particular line, then they would require actual physical diksha into that line. Otherwise, there was no possibility of them connecting or genuinely having any genuine, real spiritual capacity. And their function was not considered legitimate. And so in order to break Mahaprabhu's teachings from outside of this limited confinement that they'd been put into, this relativity, this relativization of Mahaprabhu's teachings, Siddhanta Saraswati broke all of those, you could say, traditions. So he's considered a big revolutionary. Even to some he was considered a militant revolutionary. Even to the point where the caste Goswamis, or the Goswami lineages, that they date themselves back, or they trace the lineage back to Mahaprabhu's associates. So they're not to be disrespected as such, definitely not, but the idea that Mahaprabhu's universal religion of love can be confined or only accessed through these physical lineages was not accepted by Siddhanta Saraswati. Now, of course, they didn't like that at all, because there were many privileges that came along with a monopoly on this, many even material privileges, as well as prestige and status. And so they even attempted to assassinate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati 1 year in Mayapur on the Navadvip Parikram, in Navadvip actually. They tried to assassinate him, and it was a very dangerous situation for a while. One disciple had to quickly swap clothes, because Siddhanta Saraswati was dressed as a sannyasi, of course, in sannyas vesh. Most of his disciples were not sannyasis. So one disciple quickly said, they ran into a house because there were bricks being thrown down from balconies and from the roof, etc. So they ran into a house to escape the torrent of bricks and missiles, and the disciple said, all right, we have to we have to get out of here, but to do so safely, we have to swap Vaish. So which is a very kind of you could say, drastic action, but it was necessary to take as a service. So the clothes were swapped and they had to leave like that. And so this disciple actually stayed in the house that Siddhanta Saraswati left, in the disciple's clothes, so he wouldn't be recognized, because the attackers were looking for someone dressed as a sannyasi. That was very, very close. And many other things. I mean, you could say that was one of the more extreme incidents. But the opposition and the criticism of Siddhanta Saraswati was quite prolonged and vehement, and it still does go on in some circles. But that didn't daunt him, of course. And the message that Mahaprabhu's mercy and teachings are accessible to everyone. They're not the domain, they're not confined to they're not confined under any of the relativity of this material world. They're beyond that. So to try and make them subservient to a family or to some kind of particular lineage just for the sake of that is limiting their access and doing a disservice to Mahaprabhu's mission in the world. So he broke with that. It was considered quite revolutionary. And re-established the concept of Shiksha Parampara, Bhagavad Parampara, and the supremacy of honoring the actual current of truth rather than an obedience to tradition simply for the sake of tradition. And that's why Guru Maharaj says that in between Janava Devi and Bipin Bihari Goswami, there were many more sort of obscure gurus, and that is not necessarily, I mean, they come in a formal Diksha line, but he's saying what sort of regard do they merit? They may not merit much regard, because although they are formal rungs on a ladder, if there's no actual conveyance of spiritual potency, why should they be given more regard than they merit? If one is coming to access that spiritual potency and someone is not representing that, then they're of minimal merit. And someone that is representing that, is delivering that, is conducting that spiritual energy, they are given respect, and they are recognized and approached as someone who can help one on their spiritual path. Also, I believe Gurudev gives the example. So Guru Maharaj is talking here about Aurobindo Ghosh being recognized by his writing. He was like a revolutionary, right? Trying to work as an agitator to evict the British from India, and had to go into hiding for fear of imprisonment. But this lawyer, this prosecutor, Mr. Norton, recognized his writing, even though it was written anonymously or perhaps under a pseudonym. And I believe Gurudev also gives that same principle with a different analogy of a dog. A dog will recognize his master regardless of the master's attire. The master can arrive in fancy dress, or any kind of dress, or no dress, and the dog will still be the same master. He can recognize his master regardless of the form that the master takes. It's the principle being described. One Krishna in many gurus. Where were we? So the substance should always be given a higher value than the form. First, understand the degree of purity in Krishna consciousness. The followers of form are only imitationists, They want only to exploit Mahaprabhu and not to serve him. They are our worst enemies. They are traitors. They have taken the garb of Mahaprabhu's sampradaya and they are saying something bogus. This is cheap marketing. They are extensively selling adulterated things very cheaply. They have no inner necessity to attain the purest thing. Pujalaragapata Gauravabange. Although he was such an exalted Vaishnav, our Guru Maharaj never presented himself as a great devotee. He always used to say, I am a servant of the Vaishnavas. That was his claim. And he would say, the higher devotees are my Guru. They are so exalted. First come and practice all these things, and then you can hope to reach the goal. It is not so easy or so cheap. Out of many liberated persons, a pure devotee of Lord Krishna is extremely rare. Koti mukta madhye durlabha eka Krishna bhakta. Krishna consciousness is an internal thing, and those who cannot see the internal truth will make much of the external cover. We do not support that. Rather, we are interested in the real spirit. All the opposing elements who are interested in externals cannot touch us. Dogs may bark, but the barking of a dog has no importance. Because they make so much of the outer thing, they have no real purification of the heart to accept the pure thing, to discriminate what is purity or what is love of Godhead, prema, after which even Brahma and Mahadev aspire. That's the end of that chapter. Any contributions, questions, comments, elaborations, thoughts?
The point you made about if you don't actually understand the potency which your Guru has given you, you cannot recognize it elsewhere reliably. I think that's a very, very good point. I don't think I've heard anybody say that before. Yeah.
It's essential as a mechanism to ensure that one is not simply obeying the dictates, whimsical dictates, because there's so many different voices in the human condition. There's so many different pulls. You know, like the stomach has a voice, I'm hungry. The tongue has a different voice, I want nice taste. As a myriad of different fleeting desires in the mind. Opinions can change over the course of a life, or you change one's circumstance and opinions change, or you present additional knowledge and education to a person, their opinions change. So a person's opinions can be subject to varying degrees of whimsicality, which means that they're not reliable. Something is of a temporary nature, is unreliable. You cannot put too much of an investment of time and energy into it. You cannot have faith in it. It's like if you want to, invest your money and you become aware that the investment is going to sink or void your invested money in a short amount of time. You'd have to be crazy to go ahead and invest your money in it. In the same sense, the mind is changing constantly. So if you are to simply go and obey the dictates of your mind for something as important as spiritual instruction, it's a bit crazy. Because the mind will change depending on the circumstance. So there needs to be some kind of factor that is deeper and of greater longevity than the likes and dislikes of the mind. And not just the mind, but the intellect too. You say, trust your mind, trust your intellect. The intellect is of greater value. But still, it alone is not an instrument capable of detecting spiritual substance. not by itself. It can be of some subsidiary, ancillary support to one's spiritual progress and practice. But in and of itself, it's an unreliable detector of spiritual substance. And until one has immersed oneself in that which the Guru has come to give in Gurudev's instructions, as the song we sing goes, Guru Mukha Padma Vakya, Chite Te Koriya Aikya, to make the instructions of the Guru one with one's heart. And realistically, until that stage has been achieved, one is open to the risk of not recognizing one's Gurudev in other places, even though one may think that they are, unless they have fully embodied and applied the instructions and the teachings of their Guru, and some degree of realization has been achieved, then they may not recognize their Guru elsewhere, the substance of their Guru, when it is appearing in a different form. Which means two things. It means first that one may think that they're recognizing the substance of the Guru in a different form, but it's not actually that. So they're making a mistake. They're making an error of judgment. Or the Guru may come in a different form, but they may not see it. So they're losing an opportunity. So it's extremely important to be able to recognize, and it can only come through a certain amount of purity of heart and dedication to Guru and sincerity. Sincerity, dedication to the instructions of the Guru. And then that same instruction that one's Guru has embodied can be recognized elsewhere. Until then, there's always a margin of error. So it's an extremely important point, and it's a lesson to be kept in mind when there are so many counterfeit, as Guru Maharaj says here, counterfeit items. What is he saying? Adulterated things being extensively sold. So, extensively selling adulterated things very cheaply. It's like until one, for example, gemstones, right? They use gemstones in Jyotish, in astrology. So some people make a business out of selling them, imitation ones. Or cheaper ones that have been dyed and had their cracks filled in some way. In other words, they're not of an inherent high quality, but they've been made to look as a good quality gem and being sold for a high price. So in order to distinguish a fake from a fake that looks like a quality gem from an actual good quality gem, one needs to have a certain amount of experience and a certain amount of insight and knowledge. And so the same applies to recognizing one's Guru's instructions when they appear elsewhere with a different covering over them, different external form. Be like the dog, loyal and able to recognize one's Guru regardless of the form. Gurudev liked those qualities in dogs, actually. Shall we finish up? Jai Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sri Thadev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai, Sri Gurudev Ki Jai.
Would you like to lead us in chanting?
Oh, I thought Kat was going to lead.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Yeah, why don't you lead?
Maybe.
Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha.
Hari Haraye Nama Krishna